On the evening of October 12, 2010, in the small town of Culpeper, Virginia, where autumn leaves scattered across colonial-era streets and the Blue Ridge Mountains stood watch in the distance, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher named Michelle Harper finished her evening jog and returned to the townhouse she shared with her husband of 4 years. Michelle had sandy blonde hair that she tied back in a ponytail when she ran, green eyes that her students said sparkled when she laughed, and a daily routine so predictable that neighbors could set their watches by her 5:30 p.m. return from the running trail. She taught second grade at Emerald Hill Elementary, kept a garden of sunflowers in her small backyard, and called her mother every Wednesday evening without fail. But on the morning of October 13, 2010, Michelle Harper did not arrive at school for her 8 o'clock class. Her car remained parked in the driveway. Her lesson plan sat unfinished on her kitchen table, and when police arrived at her townhouse that afternoon, summoned by a concerned principal, they found signs of a struggle, a back door standing open to the October wind, and no trace of Michelle Harper anywhere within those walls. For the next 14 years, investigators would chase shadows, interview hundreds of witnesses, and watch as the case grew cold despite every effort to keep it alive. But the question that would torment everyone who knew her remained: what happened to Michelle Harper in those hours between her evening jog and the morning she never showed up to teach? Culpeper, Virginia, sits in the heart of the state's Piedmont region, roughly 70 miles southwest of Washington, D.C., where rolling hills meet farmland and history seeps from every brick building on Main Street. In 2010, the town held approximately 17,000 residents, a place where Friday night football games drew crowds in the hundreds, and the local diner still served breakfast all day to farmers and commuters alike. The downtown historic district featured buildings dating back to the 1700s, antique shops nestled between family-owned restaurants, and a courthouse that had witnessed centuries of justice. It was a community where people knew their neighbors, where doors were often left unlocked, and where the idea that something terrible could happen felt impossibly distant. Michelle Harper had moved to Culpeper in 2008, 2 years after marrying Thomas Harper, a 32-year-old pharmaceutical sales representative whose territory stretched across central Virginia. They had met at Virginia Commonwealth University, where Michelle studied education and Thomas completed his business degree. Those who knew them in those early years described a couple that seemed happy, attending church on Sundays at Culpeper Baptist, hosting dinner parties in their modest townhouse on Greenbrier Lane, and talking about starting a family once Michelle finished her first few years of teaching. The townhouse itself sat in a development built in the late 1990s, a cluster of 70 units arranged in groups of 4, each painted a muted shade of tan or gray with black shutters and small patches of lawn front and back. The Harpers lived in Unit 47, a 2-story structure with the master bedroom upstairs, a guest room Michelle used as a home office, and a kitchen that opened into a living room where they kept a television, a blue couch her mother had given them, and photographs of their wedding day on the mantle. Clears throat. October 12, 2010, began as an ordinary Tuesday. The temperature hovered around 68 degrees, warm for mid-autumn, with clear skies that stretched overhead like blue canvas. Michelle Harper woke at 6 a.m., as she did every weekday, and followed her morning routine with the precision of someone who found comfort in structure. She showered, dressed in khaki pants and a green cardigan her sister had sent for her birthday, and made coffee in the kitchen while Thomas prepared for his day. He had a morning meeting in Charlottesville, about 40 miles west, and planned to visit 3 medical offices before returning home that evening around 7. At 7:15 a.m., Michelle kissed Thomas goodbye at the front door. Neighbors later told investigators they saw his silver Nissan Altima pull out of the driveway at approximately 7:20 a.m., heading toward Route 29. Michelle left for school at 7:40 a.m., arriving at Emerald Hill Elementary by 7:50 a.m., her blue Honda Accord parking in the same spot she used every morning, third row from the building entrance. The school day proceeded without incident. Michelle taught reading to her second-grade class, supervised lunch at 11:30 a.m., and stayed after the 3 o'clock dismissal to grade papers and prepare materials for the following day's lesson on multiplication basics. She left the school at 4:45 p.m., waving to the janitor as she walked to her car, her canvas tote bag slung over her shoulder, her keys jangling as she unlocked the driver's side door. Security footage from the school parking lot, reviewed later by investigators, showed Michelle driving away at 4:47 p.m. The drive from Emerald Hill Elementary to Greenbrier Lane took approximately 12 minutes. Michelle arrived home at 5:02 p.m., according to a neighbor who happened to be collecting mail as Michelle pulled into her driveway. The neighbor, a retired postal worker named Dorothy Chen, would later tell police that Michelle seemed cheerful, mentioning she planned to run before starting dinner. Michelle changed into running clothes, gray athletic shorts, a white t-shirt, and the blue running shoes she kept by the back door. She filled a water bottle, tucked her house key into the small pocket on her shorts, and left through the back door at approximately 5:15 p.m., the running trail she preferred wound through a wooded area behind the townhouse development, a paved path that stretched for 2 miles in a loop, popular with residents who wanted exercise without driving elsewhere. Dorothy Chen saw Michelle jogging past her patio at 5:18 p.m. Another neighbor, Michael Torres, passed Michelle on the trail at approximately 5:35 p.m., exchanging waves as they ran in opposite directions. Michael would later describe Michelle as looking normal, not distressed, maintaining her usual pace. He estimated she was about 3/4 through the loop at that point. At 5:52 p.m., Michelle's route should have brought her back to Greenbrier Lane. The run typically took her 35 to 40 minutes, but no one reported seeing Michelle return. The back door to Unit 47, which Michelle had left unlocked during her run as she always did, stood slightly ajar when Thomas Harper arrived home at 7:12 p.m. Thomas pulled into the driveway, noting Michelle's car parked in its usual spot. He entered through the front door, calling her name. The house felt empty. The living room appeared undisturbed, the kitchen clean except for the coffee maker Michelle had used that morning. Thomas walked to the back door and noticed it hanging open about 6 inches, the frame showing fresh scratches near the lock that he did not remember seeing before. He stepped into the backyard, calling Michelle's name again. The October evening had grown darker, the temperature dropping into the 50s. Thomas walked down to the running trail entrance, looking in both directions, seeing no one. He returned to the house, climbed the stairs to their bedroom, and found Michelle's work clothes folded on the bed, her tote bag resting on the chair by the window, her cell phone plugged into the charger on her nightstand. At 7:23 p.m., Thomas Harper called 911. The call recording, later played in court, captured his voice rising in pitch as he explained that his wife had gone for a run 2 hours earlier and had not returned. The dispatcher asked standard questions about what Michelle had been wearing, whether they had argued, whether she had seemed upset. Thomas answered no to everything except the description of her running clothes. Culpeper Police Department dispatched 2 officers to Greenbrier Lane at 7:28 p.m. Officers Brandon Mills and Jennifer Peterson arrived at 7:36 p.m., parking in front of Unit 47. Thomas met them at the door, his hands shaking, his face pale under the porch light. The officers followed him through the house, noting the open back door, the scratches on the frame, the orderly state of the interior. Officer Peterson walked the running trail with a flashlight while Officer Mills stayed with Thomas, asking questions and documenting his answers in a notebook. By 8:15 p.m., additional officers had arrived. By 8:45 p.m., the Culpeper Police Department had called in a K-9 unit from a neighboring county. And by 9:30 p.m., as darkness settled completely over the townhouse development and the temperature continued to drop, search teams spread through the woods surrounding the running trail, their flashlight beams cutting through the trees like searchlights hunting for something precious that had been lost. The first full night of searching revealed nothing. No torn clothing, no signs of struggle along the trail, no indication of where Michelle Harper had gone after Michael Torres saw her jogging past at 5:35 p.m. The autumn leaves that covered portions of the trail showed no disturbance, no drag marks, no scuffing that might indicate someone had left the path in a hurry or by force. The woods remained silent except for the voices of searchers calling Michelle's name over and over, until their voices grew hoarse, and the words seemed to dissolve into the darkness without finding anything to land upon. By the morning of October 13, the search had grown exponentially. The Culpeper Police Department coordinated with the Virginia State Police, bringing in specialized search and rescue teams trained in missing persons cases. Volunteers from the community began arriving at Greenbrier Lane by 7 a.m., gathering in the parking lot of a nearby church that served as a temporary command center. The church pastor, Reverend Thomas Whitaker, had known Michelle from Sunday services and opened the fellowship hall to search coordinators, setting up tables with maps, organizing volunteers into grid search teams, and establishing a phone line for tips. The media arrived before noon. Local news crews from Charlottesville and Fredericksburg set up cameras outside the police station, interviewing neighbors and broadcasting Michelle's photograph across evening newscasts. Her school picture from the faculty directory showed a young woman with blonde hair, warm eyes, and a genuine smile, the kind of image that made viewers feel they knew her personally, that made the case feel urgent and heartbreaking in equal measure. Search teams worked in methodical patterns. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the woods, covering every inch of terrain within a 1-mile radius of the townhouse development. K-9 units tracked Michelle's scent from her back door to the running trail, then followed the path she typically took. But the dogs lost the scent near the trail's halfway point, circling in confusion before sitting down, indicating they could track no further. This detail troubled investigators. Dogs trained in tracking rarely lost a scent so completely unless something had interrupted the trail. Investigators interviewed every resident of the Greenbrier Lane development. Dorothy Chen repeated what she had seen: Michelle leaving for her run at 5:15 p.m. looking normal, stretching briefly before heading toward the trail. Michael Torres confirmed passing Michelle at 5:35 p.m., noting nothing unusual about her demeanor or appearance. No other residents reported seeing Michelle after that time. No one heard screams. No one witnessed a struggle. The running trail, used by dozens of residents each day, somehow became a place where Michelle Harper simply ceased to exist. Clear's throat. Thomas Harper became the focus of police attention by the second day, not because of obvious suspicion, but because statistics and experience taught investigators that when a married woman disappeared, the husband required thorough scrutiny. Detectives interviewed Thomas repeatedly, walking him through his timeline on October 12 with painstaking detail. He described his morning meeting in Charlottesville, providing the names and phone numbers of the doctors he had visited. He showed investigators his work calendar, his mileage log, and receipts from a gas station where he had stopped at 3:15 p.m. Those who knew Thomas Harper described him as quiet, reliable, somewhat reserved in social situations but friendly enough. He had grown up in Richmond, played baseball in high school, and chose pharmaceutical sales because his father had worked in the medical field. Coworkers said Thomas performed his job competently, meeting quotas without being exceptional, maintaining professional relationships without forming close friendships. His sales manager, Patricia Drummond, told investigators that Thomas seemed like a devoted husband, occasionally mentioning Michelle's teaching successes and showing photographs of their townhouse renovations. But as investigators dug deeper, small inconsistencies began to emerge. Thomas had told the 911 dispatcher he arrived home at 7:15 p.m. when pressed by detectives. He adjusted the time to 7:12 p.m., explaining he had checked his phone after parking. His work log showed his last appointment ending at 4:30 p.m. in Charlottesville. The drive from Charlottesville to Culpeper typically took 45 minutes via Route 29. That timeline would have placed Thomas home by 5:15 p.m., not 7:12 p.m. When Detective Sarah Brennan asked about the time discrepancy on October 14, Thomas explained he had stopped for dinner at a restaurant in Orange, roughly halfway between Charlottesville and Culpeper. He ate alone, he said, at a place called the Country Table, arriving around 5 p.m. and leaving around 6:30 p.m. But when investigators contacted the Country Table, no one remembered serving Thomas that evening, and his credit card showed no charge from the restaurant. Thomas then claimed he had paid cash and provided a $20 bill from his wallet as evidence. But the bill bore no marking, no receipt, nothing to confirm his story. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about other details that troubled them. Thomas had shown remarkably little emotion during interviews, answering questions in a monotone voice, his face blank, his hands steady. When asked about Michelle's state of mind, he described her as happy but did not elaborate. When asked about their marriage, he said it was fine, using that exact word, fine, without offering details or examples. His responses felt rehearsed to some investigators, as though he had prepared answers to expected questions. Physical evidence proved sparse and frustrating. Crime scene technicians processed the townhouse on October 14, photographing every room, dusting for fingerprints, and examining the scratches on the back door frame. The scratches appeared fresh, the wood lighter where something had scraped away the paint and weathered outer layer. But determining when those scratches appeared proved impossible. Thomas said he had never noticed them before October 12, but he also admitted he rarely examined the door frame closely. In the master bedroom, investigators found Michelle's cell phone, her purse, and her wallet. Her keys were missing, presumably still in the pocket of her running shorts. Her car remained parked in the driveway, the odometer reading 47,293 miles, roughly consistent with her daily driving patterns. Nothing in the house appeared disturbed beyond the open back door. No signs of theft. No evidence of forced entry through the front. The scene suggested someone had either entered through the unlocked back door while Michelle was running, or Michelle had returned from her run and encountered something that caused her to leave again without her phone or purse. The running trail yielded little more. Despite extensive searching, investigators found no physical evidence of violence or struggle. No torn fabric, no drops of blood, no scuff marks suggesting someone had been dragged. The woods surrounding the trail held thousands of acres of dense forest, ravines, and hidden clearings where something could remain concealed for years. Search teams covered as much ground as possible, but the sheer size of the search area made comprehensive coverage impossible. Media coverage intensified through October, with Michelle's photograph appearing on evening news broadcasts across Virginia and neighboring states. Her mother, Patricia Davies, flew in from Ohio and gave a tearful press conference on October 18, pleading for anyone with information to contact police. Her sister, Rebecca Davies, set up a Facebook page called Find Michelle Harper that attracted thousands of followers. Reward money collected from donations reached $25,000 by the end of October. But as weeks passed without breakthrough developments, the investigation began to slow. Tips flooded the police department, hundreds of calls reporting possible sightings, suspicious vehicles, and theories ranging from plausible to absurd. Investigators followed every lead, driving to neighboring counties to interview witnesses who claimed they had seen a blonde woman matching Michelle's description. Each lead dissolved into disappointment. Each supposed sighting proved to be someone else, a case of wishful thinking or mistaken identity. By December 2010, active searching had ceased. The case remained open, assigned to Detective Sarah Brennan, who continued reviewing evidence and following up on occasional tips. But the daily urgency faded. The search teams dispersed. The media moved on to other stories. And Thomas Harper remained in the townhouse on Greenbrier Lane, living alone in the space he had shared with Michelle, maintaining his pharmaceutical sales job, answering investigators' questions whenever they arose, but offering nothing new, no revelations, no confessions, only the same consistent story about arriving home at 7:12 p.m. and finding his wife gone. For those who have ever watched a case go cold, who have seen the initial frenzy of activity fade into frustrating silence, the months following Michelle Harper's disappearance carried a particular kind of sorrow. The yard signs asking for information began to weather and fade. The Facebook page updates grew less frequent. And somewhere in that townhouse, amid the ordinary furniture and kitchen appliances and folded laundry, the truth about what happened on October 12, 2010, remained locked away, waiting. The years that followed Michelle Harper's disappearance transformed Culpeper in ways both visible and invisible. The townhouse development on Greenbrier Lane, once a place where neighbors felt comfortable jogging alone at dusk, became somewhere parents warned their children away from after dark. The running trail, though still maintained by the Homeowners Association, saw fewer users. People who had never thought about personal safety began locking doors, installing security systems, and looking over their shoulders when walking alone. Thomas Harper continued living in Unit 47 through 2011 and into 2012. Neighbors reported seeing him leave for work each morning, return each evening, and spend weekends inside with the curtains drawn. He attended church sporadically, sitting alone in the back pew, leaving before anyone could approach him with questions or condolences. Those who attempted conversation found him distant, polite but unreachable, as though he had retreated somewhere deep inside himself where grief or guilt or innocence could not be observed or judged. In March 2012, 18 months after Michelle's disappearance, Thomas placed the townhouse on the market. The listing price was set below comparable properties, suggesting he wanted a quick sale more than maximum profit. The real estate agent later told investigators that Thomas seemed eager to leave, signing papers without reading them carefully, accepting the first offer that came in without negotiation. By June 2012, Thomas had moved to Richmond, taking a new position with a different pharmaceutical company, starting over in a city where no one knew his name or his history. Detective Brennan maintained contact with Thomas during this period, calling him monthly to check in and ask if he remembered any new details. Thomas's answers remained consistent. No, he had not remembered anything new. No, Michelle had not mentioned feeling unsafe or threatened before her disappearance. No, their marriage had not been troubled. Yes, he still hoped she would be found alive. His voice during these calls carried a flatness that troubled Brennan, a lack of inflection that seemed either like shock that had never worn off or a performance so practiced it had become natural. In April 2013, Brennan received a call from Michelle's sister Rebecca, who said she had been sorting through boxes of Michelle's belongings that their mother had kept in storage. Among Michelle's college papers and teaching materials, Rebecca found a journal from 2009, a year before the disappearance. Most entries discussed mundane topics, lesson plans, grocery lists, weekend activities. But several entries from August and September 2009 struck Rebecca as significant. She read them to Brennan over the phone. August 19, 2009. Thomas came home angry today, won't say why. I asked about his meeting and he snapped at me. It's not like him. He apologized later, said work stress. I hope that's all it is. September 7, 2009. I asked Thomas about starting a family. He said not yet, maybe in a few years. But we've been saying that for a while now. Sometimes I wonder if he really wants children or if he's just agreeing to make me happy. September 24, 2009. Found Thomas looking through my phone last night. He said he was checking the time, but his expression wasn't right. I don't know what he thought he'd find. I've got nothing to hide. The journal entries suggested marital tension, though nothing approaching violence or danger. Brennan added them to the case file and requested permission to bring Thomas back for additional questioning. But without new physical evidence or witness testimony, the prosecutor's office declined to pursue further investigation. The journal, while interesting, proved nothing about what happened on October 12, 2010. Clears throat. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have felt the creeping suspicion that the person sharing your life might be concealing something fundamental, the experience carries a particular psychological weight. You begin noticing inconsistencies that might mean nothing. A story told slightly differently the second time. A phone call taken in another room. An expression that doesn't match the words being spoken. And once doubt takes root, it colors everything, transforming ordinary moments into potential evidence of something darker lurking beneath the surface. Michelle's family never stopped believing Thomas knew more than he admitted. Patricia Davies told reporters in 2014 that she had always felt uncomfortable around Thomas, that something about his demeanor seemed off, though she could never articulate exactly what troubled her. Rebecca spoke more bluntly in online forums dedicated to the case, stating her belief that Thomas had harmed Michelle and hidden her remains somewhere they would never be found. But belief and proof remained separate things. Detective Brennan, despite her own suspicions, could not build a prosecutable case on intuition and timeline inconsistencies. The physical evidence remained minimal. No body had been discovered. No witnesses had come forward with information directly linking Thomas to his wife's disappearance. And without something concrete, something undeniable, the case sat in limbo, neither solved nor forgotten, occupying a painful middle space where families wait and wonder if justice will ever arrive. By 2015, 5 years after Michelle's disappearance, public interest had largely faded. The Facebook page went dormant. The reward money remained unclaimed. Detective Brennan had been promoted and assigned new cases, though she kept Michelle's file on her desk, reviewing it during slow periods, hopping for the breakthrough that never seemed to materialize. Thomas Harper, meanwhile, had rebuilt his life in Richmond. He dated occasionally, according to surveillance reports from private investigators hired by Michelle's family, though no relationships appeared serious. He lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the near West End, drove a different car than the Nissan Altima he had owned in 2010, and maintained minimal contact with anyone from his Culpeper days. To outward appearances, he had moved on, leaving the past behind like old furniture during a relocation. But the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. And in February 2018, nearly 8 years after Michelle Harper vanished, a piece of evidence emerged that would change everything. The revelation began not with dramatic discovery, but with a mundane traffic stop. On February 14, 2018, a Virginia state trooper pulled over a silver Honda Civic for speeding on Interstate 64 near Goochland County. The driver, a 42-year-old man named Gerald Hutchins, appeared nervous during the interaction, his hands trembling as he handed over his license and registration. The trooper noticed a strong smell of air freshener in the vehicle and asked permission to search the car. Gerald consented. In the trunk, wrapped in a tarp and secured with bungee cords, the trooper discovered human remains. Gerald Hutchins was arrested on the spot. Within 24 hours, forensic examination identified the remains as belonging to a woman who had been reported missing from Chesterfield County in 2016. Gerald ultimately confessed to her abduction, providing details that led to additional charges and revelations about other crimes. During interrogation, Gerald made an unexpected statement. He told investigators he had been active in Central Virginia since the mid-2000s, targeting women who jogged alone on secluded trails. He described a pattern: observe potential targets, learn their routines, wait for opportunities when they ran without companions. Over the course of several interviews, Gerald provided information about multiple unsolved cases across Virginia. On March 3, 2018, Detective Brennan received a call from a Virginia State Police investigator working Gerald's case. The investigator asked if Brennan was familiar with the Michelle Harper disappearance. Brennan confirmed she had worked the case for years. The investigator explained that Gerald had mentioned recognizing Michelle's name from news coverage and claimed to have seen her jogging on a trail in Culpeper in October 2010. He did not claim responsibility for her disappearance, but said he had been in the area around that time, scouting locations. This information reignited the investigation. Brennan requested a full interview with Gerald, which occurred on March 12, 2018, at the maximum security facility where he was being held pending trial. Gerald described driving through Culpeper in early October 2010, noticing the running trail behind Greenbrier Lane, and watching several women jog the route over multiple days. He remembered seeing a blonde woman matching Michelle's description, but insisted he had not approached her or been near the trail on October 12. Gerald's testimony, while disturbing, did not solve Michelle's case. He could not provide specific dates for his observations. He could not describe what Michelle wore or offer details that would prove he had actually seen her rather than just studied her photograph in news reports. And crucially, he denied any involvement in her disappearance, stating matter-of-factly during the interview, "I watched her, that's all. I didn't touch that one." The investigation took an unexpected turn on April 7, 2018, when Detective Brennan received a letter postmarked from Richmond. The envelope contained a single handwritten page, unsigned, written in blue ink on lined notebook paper. The letter read, "I need to tell someone what I know. In October 2010, I lived in Culpeper near Greenbrier Lane. I saw something the night that woman disappeared. I saw a man carrying something wrapped in a blue tarp toward a car around 9 or 10 at night. The car was parked on a side street near the woods. I didn't think anything of it at the time, figured he was hauling trash or equipment. But I saw his face under the streetlight. I've seen his picture in old news articles. It was the husband. I never said anything because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to get involved. But I can't stop thinking about it. I'm writing this anonymously because I don't want trouble, but you should know. The letter contained no identifying information. The paper appeared generic, available at any office supply store. The handwriting could not be matched to any known exemplars without a suspect to compare against. The postmark showed the letter had been mailed from a Richmond postal facility, but millions of people lived in the greater Richmond area. Despite its anonymous nature, the letter carried weight. It described a blue tarp, a detail never released to the public. Crime scene photos from October 2010 showed Thomas Harper kept a blue tarp in his garage, visible in background images, used for covering firewood. The tarp went missing sometime after Michelle's disappearance, according to a neighbor who had helped Thomas move in 2012. Brennan brought the letter to the prosecutor's office. After lengthy discussion, prosecutors agreed to request a search warrant for Thomas Harper's Richmond apartment and his current vehicle. The warrant, signed by a judge on April 20, 2018, authorized investigators to search for any evidence related to Michelle Harper's disappearance, including but not limited to the blue tarp mentioned in the anonymous letter. On April 23, 2018, at 6:15 a.m., Virginia State Police and Richmond Police Department officers executed the search warrant at Thomas's apartment. Thomas answered the door in pajamas, his face showing surprise but not panic. He asked if he needed a lawyer. Officers informed him of his rights and explained the warrant. Thomas stepped aside, allowing investigators to enter. The search took 7 hours. Officers photographed every room, collected Thomas's current computer and phone, examined his closets, and inspected his vehicle, a gray Ford Fusion parked in the apartment complex lot. They found no blue tarp. They found no physical evidence directly linking Thomas to Michelle's disappearance. But they did find something else, a locked safe hidden in Thomas's bedroom closet behind boxes of old files. Thomas initially refused to provide the combination. After consulting with a lawyer who arrived at 9:30 a.m., Thomas changed his mind and opened the safe. Inside, investigators found approximately $15,000 in cash, several savings bonds, and a small leather journal with a blue cover. The journal contained entries dated from 2009 through 2012, written in Thomas's handwriting, documenting his thoughts and observations during his marriage to Michelle and the period following her disappearance. The entries were damning not because they confessed to a crime, but because they revealed Thomas's mindset. One entry from March 2010, 7 months before Michelle vanished, read, "She asks too many questions. Where was I? Who did I see? What did I do? I feel smothered. I need space, but I don't know how to get it without hurting her." An entry from October 11, 2010, one day before Michelle disappeared, stated, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. Something has to change." And most troublingly, an entry from October 14, 2010, 2 days after Michelle vanished, read, "I didn't think it would feel like this. I thought I would feel relief, but all I feel is empty, like I gave up something I can't get back. People are asking questions. I have to keep my answers straight. I have to be careful." Clears throat. The journal entries did not constitute a confession. Thomas never explicitly stated he had harmed Michelle or described what happened to her. But the entries, combined with the timeline inconsistencies from 2010 and the anonymous letter, provided prosecutors with enough evidence to move forward. On May 8, 2018, nearly 8 years after Michelle Harper disappeared, the Culpeper County grand jury indicted Thomas Harper on charges related to his wife's disappearance. The arrest occurred on May 9, 2018, at 10:30 a.m., as Thomas arrived at work at the pharmaceutical company's Richmond office. Virginia State Police took him into custody in the parking lot, placing handcuffs on his wrists while coworkers watched from office windows. Thomas did not resist. He did not speak except to ask where they were taking him. His face, according to the arresting officer's later testimony, showed no emotion at all, as blank as it had been during all those interviews 8 years earlier. Media coverage exploded. News outlets across Virginia ran stories about the arrest, featuring Michelle's photograph alongside Thomas's mugshot. The narrative emerged quickly. Devoted husband who seemed above suspicion had finally been exposed as the person responsible for his wife's disappearance. Michelle's family released a statement expressing relief that someone would finally be held accountable. But public reaction split along predictable lines. Some people believed Thomas's guilt had been obvious from the beginning, pointing to his inconsistent timeline, his unemotional demeanor, and the journal entries as proof of his involvement. Others questioned whether the evidence justified prosecution, noting the absence of physical proof, the reliance on an anonymous letter, and the journal entries that could be interpreted in multiple ways. The preliminary hearing took place on June 15, 2018, in Culpeper County Circuit Court. Thomas, represented by attorney Michael Brenner, entered a plea of not guilty. Prosecutor Linda Martinez presented the state's evidence: the timeline inconsistencies from October 2010, the anonymous letter describing a man matching Thomas's description carrying something wrapped in a blue tarp, and the journal entries suggesting premeditation and guilty knowledge. Thomas's attorney argued that the prosecution's case relied entirely on circumstantial evidence and speculation. The timeline discrepancies could be explained by poor memory during a traumatic situation. The anonymous letter could not be authenticated or verified. The journal entries, while concerning, described Thomas's emotional state rather than his actions. Most importantly, the prosecution could not prove Michelle Harper was deceased, could not produce a body, could not establish definitively that a crime had occurred beyond someone disappearing. The judge, after hearing arguments from both sides, ruled that sufficient probable cause existed to proceed to trial. Thomas remained in custody, bail set at $500,000, an amount his family could not afford. The trial began on October 1, 2018, 8 years and 19 days after Michelle Harper vanished. The prosecution presented its case over 12 days, calling witnesses who testified about Thomas's behavior in the days following Michelle's disappearance, investigators who described the timeline inconsistencies, and forensic experts who explained how the scratches on the back door frame suggested forced entry from outside rather than someone leaving the house normally. The anonymous letter became a focal point of testimony. The prosecution argued it contained details only someone who had witnessed the events of October 12, 2010, could know. The defense countered that the letter might have been written by someone with malicious intent, someone hoping to frame Thomas, or even potentially by investigators themselves, desperate to solve a cold case. The journal entries provoked intense debate. The prosecution characterized them as evidence of premeditation, Thomas's own words revealing his desire to be free of his marriage and his guilty knowledge of what happened. The defense argued they merely showed a man struggling with normal marital frustrations and processing grief in the aftermath of his wife's unexplained disappearance. Thomas himself did not testify. His attorney advised against it, believing the prosecution had failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt, and that Thomas's testimony could only provide opportunities for damaging cross-examination. On October 18, 2018, After 14 hours of deliberation spread over 3 days, the jury returned with a verdict. Thomas Harper was found guilty on charges related to Michelle Harper's disappearance. The court